Good evening and welcome to the O&M Stockroom. We're your hosts, Brian McGarry.
And Ken O'Malley.
And tonight's episode is episode number 10 of Complimentary Cinema. Complimentary Cinema is a series in which we regularly watch a free movie on YouTube and then discuss it at length. So if you don't like spoilers, this is probably not going to be the podcast for you.
We're going to spoil the hell out of this.
We're going to spoil the hell out of this because, that's the fun of it. So Ken, what did we watch tonight?
Well, today was my pick, and the film we picked was The Neighbor.
The Neighbor.
The Neighbor.
That implies one neighbor.
Not just any neighbor. The Neighbor.
The Neighbor.
Yes.
The Neighbor. And
the titular neighbor was the actor on the cover of this film, which is how I picked the film. Picture of him, close-up of his face, and a lady in the window in the background. So a little bit of a creeper vibe.
And that's usually how we pick these films, by whatever the poster image on the YouTube listing is. It's like, that looks good. We haven't seen it.
And I mentioned it before we started, but this movie caught my eye a previous week when I was looking at movies. I was just like, And then I ended up picking something different. But it was still on there, so we got to watch it this week.
Yeah, it's a good, it's an interesting one. I was about to say good, and I had to stop myself.
It was good.
It starts good.
It was good.
It starts
and then
good.
It wasn't good.
It's like many things in life. It began a promising. It had so much potential.
I think. The problem is it leaves a bad taste in the mouth where you would rather have a good taste, and that really sums it all up. It was a good movie.
It was a good movie.
There's a whole lot of good in this movie.
Point. So The Neighbor is a film that centers on a character named Mike, portrayed by William Fichtner, who's been in so many things that I wouldn't have time to name them all. But he's a well-renowned character actor. This is probably the first time I've ever seen him in a starring role. He's always in some kind of supporting role. Like in Contact, he's the blind friend to Jodie Foster. In Batman: The Dark Knight, he's the mafia banker with the shotgun.
Yes,
that was pretty badass.
And I knew him from Prison Break, in which he was kind of the main villain character.
So. Just a little taste. I mean, this guy is like, I'd call him like A-list character actor. He's definitely a man who's been long at the top of his game.
And he's got one of those distinct faces.
Yes, but he does not have a distinct style of acting either. He really is very versatile in spite of his particular looks. And so this movie focuses on him. He's a Southern Californian suburban technical writer who works from home and has kind of he's living in a marriage that's really has lost its flair. It's kind of, I wouldn't say dried out, but it's definitely just kind of, how would you describe his marriage?
Well, it's one of those things where they're each into it at a different time. They're never in sync about anything, kind of.
They really aren't.
So, like, at one point, he gets a little hot about it, and then, she's not interested, and then she gets a little interested one time, and he's not into it, and it's just, they're kind of, they're comfortable with each other, but they're, like, it's definitely a dead bedroom situation. They're just not active anymore. And I will say, also, the beginning of this movie be very familiar to most people in the pandemic times of him working at home. It's very much a current, this would resonate with a lot of people right now.
And certainly, this takes place in pre-COVID times. The film came out in 2017, but it definitely like his social isolation and awkwardness that he's developed, because you get the impression from his character throughout the movie that he wasn't always kind of like this henpecked husband who just, stayed at home and tended to his garden when he wasn't writing. You could tell that he used to have a little more life in his step and a little more vigor.
Yeah, it's definitely kind of one of those things where working from home was nice, but it's had a more negative impact on him than he realizes. He is transformed into this just boring, blank slate kind of guy. But then it comes out in different interactions he has with people that he's really not that way. That's just the way he comes across because he's so socially withdrawn and removed.
Yeah, it just doesn't get out enough, really.
Yeah.
And then let's see. So his wife is played by the character's name is Lisa, portrayed by Jean Louisa Kelly. She was in Mr. Holland's Opus, among some other things. Uncle Buck back in '89. Another main character, Scott. He's one of the new neighbors, and he was portrayed by Michael. Where is it? Michael Rosenbaum, who was in Smallville as Lex Luthor, among others. He was also in Urban Legend. And as soon as you see Scott, you immediately want to punch him in the face.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they really cast him well for that because Michael Rosenbaum has played. I guess he's been a little bit typecast. I mean, he basically plays douchebags. And this is yet another role playing a douchebag.
Yeah, this is like one of those. It comes across so hard and so fast. He literally pulls up in a Corvette, gets out of the car, is like, "Hey, babe,"
and you immediately just want to hit him in the face with a baseball bat.
Yeah,
it's just something about him.
Like there's no question from the beginning what kind of person he is.
It's just you immediately you hate him on sight, and you're supposed to in this film, and that's fine. And then his wife, God, what the hell was her name? Jenna. So that's portrayed by Australian actress Jessica McNamee. If I butcher that name, sue me. McNamee. It looks like it looks like McNamee.
Old McNamee had a
farm.
Old
McNamee had a farm, and her name is Jessica. And she I believe is the neighbor in question. The scantily clad woman on the cover of the poster through the window. So now that we've introduced some of our main people here, why don't you give us a little synopsis?
So a lot of the film is kind of a study of Mike and his life. It's very much just showing what his average daily life is like. And then the neighbors being introduced as something that's mixing things up. Because you also kind of get the feeling that, they even mentioned they don't really like the other neighbors in the neighborhood that much. They think they're kind of boring and would rather hang out with friends than the people that they live near. And that kind of sets up this whole, isolation also for him. He doesn't talk to the neighbors that much. He doesn't get out. So it's just like his little life, which is why I say people now relate to that. A lot of people have been thrust into this life, maybe not, I mean, it's for the best health-wise now, but, a lot of people can relate to this kind of disconnected loneliness that this guy has, and he likes it because he can garden at his leisure and do his job writing, but it's definitely having an impact on his overall life. He's become, it's a little creepy. He is socially awkward, but then he also just like stares a lot when people aren't around. He's always kind of observing things, so it kind of comes across as a little unsettling.
Like over the years of him just going through the motions, something kind of switched off, and it's in this film, it's like almost part of him is trying to recover that in some fashion, because you can tell like he knows that something's missing in him and missing in his life, and this the new neighbors bring a little excitement, don't they?
Yes. So in the beginning, the neighbors are moving in, and he just takes an interest, getting to know them. They do have a little barbecue get together, and just a couple times where they interact and stuff like that. They get invited over to a swim party. Just kind of doing normal neighbory stuff, I guess. And he instantly becomes close with Jenna, sorry. With Jenna, the neighbor, because she kind of like wants to get into gardening and the backyard's a mess. And obviously Mike's a good gardener.
He's a great gardener.
He has the tomatoes. He has the whole works.
He has all the tomatoes.
Yes.
I mean, my mouth was watering looking at some of those tomatoes.
would have been great to have fresh tomatoes. But
Really?
he has fresh tomatoes every day apparently. But
And he's quite a cook too, apparently.
yeah, yep. He you mentioned, I think at some point he was kind of the household husband,
Oh, very much.
the stay-at-home husband.
The house husband, I believe, is the term.
Yes.
Of course, there could be many terms, but he cooks for his career, educational wife, who works in education, and she definitely has a lot more lively pep in her step than he does. Probably because she actually gets out every day and interacts with different people.
She has a little bit better grip on reality, I think.
A much better grip.
She's much more of a realist about things, and he's kind of more off in his head, basically. Daydreaming kind of.
He's very much in his head. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of the contrast that develops throughout the film is between she's being completely practical and he's getting more and more into this fantasy idea he has in his head of the way things are or should be.
Man, isn't that a pickle to be in?
Yeah.
And I wonder how many of you, dear listeners, are enduring the same thing right now.
So as the movie develops, we get the sense that there's a tension building, and it comes through in very simple ways. It's just the quiet time between their everyday interactions, and it really starts building when the neighbors start fighting.
So, just to step back for a moment, because you raised a really good point about how quiet everything is. There's really no music to speak of for the first full hour of this film. All of the audio that you hear is all just everyday regular noise. Cars, wind, breeze, doors closing.
They make really good use of that stuff.
They make fantastic use of those atmospheric sounds that really are the audio backdrop to all of this. And it's really effective. I didn't notice it at first, and then you pointed it out about maybe 20 minutes in, how there's no music. And it's that serves a couple of great purposes, because it really does help build the tension. It really is a great way to set the mood. And another point I was going to make is this, this is kind of a lower budget film. It's a fantastic way to save on licensing.
Yeah.
If you have no music, you don't have to pay anybody for the music.
Yes. I do think one of the reasons I think it's a really great choice for this movie is because typically the music informs your emotions. In this movie, it does not inform your emotions. You are totally left on your own to decipher how you feel about this movie. And I think that's what I really like about this whole development phase. You're not sure exactly what's going to happen. Like, is Mike crazy? Is the neighbor crazy? Is everyone just... are things just going to proceed normally in this film? Like, we don't really know. You get the sense that the tension is building towards something, but there's not really an indication of what that is.
Like you were saying earlier, when we're watching it, we just kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. It's like, what's going to happen? Because the tension in the film just builds incrementally and incrementally and incrementally. It's like the first time the neighbors fight. It's like, okay, that gets you on your edge a little bit. And then nothing quite comes of that, but he becomes, Mike's character becomes a little closer to Jenna. They talk, and they get a little closer. And then there's another incident where she squabbles, and it's like, it very slowly escalates.
But that it's the second fight where it really escalates in the fact that Mike hears someone get hit. Is it the second or third time?
That might have been the third time.
Okay. So the third time that the neighboring couple fights, he hears someone get smacked, and he's in the backyard, so he hears it very clearly, and the mood just completely changes because, it's a difference between, a squabbling couple and now like someone's getting hit.
Yeah.
And it kind of like, it just turns the whole situation,
It's like the first couple of times that he hears a disturbance, he's sitting upstairs in his office with the window shut and everything. He can't really hear
He doesn't know what's going on, really.
He doesn't know what's going on. He can't make out anything really specific. He's not really seeing anything, and even being physically in the house, he's so much more separated from what's going on out and around him. But that third time when he is in the garden, it definitely it's a little bit of a game changer for him, And that's when he goes and investigates, isn't it? Or am I jumping ahead a little bit?
You're jumping ahead. That's the one where he doesn't do anything.
Okay, that's when he doesn't do anything.
And he second guesses himself because he's like, well, should I have done something? Like, so he talks to his buddy about it. The other recurring character, I believe, is Brian.
Brian.
And
great name.
He's just his buddy who, he has a beer with. They watch sports, and he meets him at a bar at one point, and he's just a soundboard for him basically. And his neighbor's always trying to kind of guide him towards checking out the neighbor. Like, isn't she good looking?
Yeah, Brian is he's a little bit of a chauvinist pig, but he means well, and he's very lively, and he could tell that he. We find out later on that he's an old friend of Mike. They go back to their teen years. So it's like, he still has kept himself in the game of life, as where Mike has really receded away from it. And in every interaction they have, he's always trying to get him to just live a little and let loose a little and come out of his shell some more.
And unfortunately, in the case of this movie, he is pushing him in this bad direction, because he's pushing him towards the wrong situation. He's encouraging him to live in the wrong way, and I don't think he really understands that. He doesn't see what's actually happening.
That's because Brian is not in Mike's head,
right?
So he doesn't quite know what's going on.
He doesn't have enough information.
He thinks that. He knows the facts of the case, so to speak, but he just doesn't. He doesn't know what's going on with Mike emotionally, which is the dangerous part, because Mike is becoming more and more turbulent as this film goes on after years of being glacial and placid.
Exactly.
So the next thing that builds tension that came up in this is the arrival of Mike and Lisa's son, Alex, who's about the same age as Jenna, who lives next door. And, he's ostensibly home from college. He's, good looking young guy. He's got some personality. He's got some, almost every character in this film is a contrast to Mike, who we see all the time. Just kind of looking around and kind of stiff and just kind of awkward, and he's got his top. The thing that I noticed about Alex right away was he has his top button of his shirt buttoned. You don't do that.
It's unforgivable.
You just don't do that. No. That might be the thing that the kids like to do nowadays, but in my day, that would get your ass kicked. And, just whatever. Anyway. So Alex comes and, hey, he has has dinner and has a beer, with the family, and then he goes off and does stuff, and you keep thinking that, and
he meets the neighbors and kind of becomes friends with them.
Yeah, he befriends the neighbors and everything's, going well, and, as all of this is transpiring, Mike becomes more and more suspicious of Scott. And
he doesn't want Alex hanging around with him because he thinks that Scott is beating his wife, or not a great guy, and so he keeps trying to tell his wife this guy's not a good guy. Trying to tell the son, warn him off, and everyone's like, "You're crazy! Like, why do you care? Because
they're used.
It's not your business.
They're used to a bloodless, feckless man who just hides up in his office and types away,
right? Writing
technical manuals, which is, let's just pause on that for a moment. It is a solitary occupation dealing with a completely unemotional subject.
Very true.
Which, he's writing about machines and devices, and it's not even about interpersonal stuff. So not even on a theoretical level is he stimulated in the social graces and psychology and various interactions.
And his only other hobby is the gardening too, which is the same,
At least that one
solitary.
At least that contains something organic and natural in its way. But still,
it's not doing
inhuman.
any social favors.
It's still inhuman. So, as I'm saying, so Alex, shows up and he's getting to know the neighbors, and he's just constantly not around for dinner. And, there's definitely some tension there, between Alex and his parents and the family. The mom, Lisa, seems to be just cool with it. Like, yeah, whatever. He's young. He just wants to have fun. Let him do his thing. And, Mike's like, no, Scott's a bad guy. And you keep waiting for that to be, you keep waiting for that thread to really reveal itself and show you what's going to happen.
And at this point, or, just after maybe like a couple scenes with Alex, we are halfway through this movie.
Halfway.
Or more than halfway through. Maybe just about. So this movie spends so much time developing a very interesting character and some believable characters. This seems like a believable family, a believable situation with the neighbors next door. So we spend a lot of time building up this reality that we can all see, while you can also see the fantasy going in Mike's head. Like, you can see it, and that's what's unsettling, is he doesn't have to say anything for you to see exactly what emotions are behind him. Whenever he's watching the neighbor from his room, while she's just doing whatever in the backyard, and the other characters can't see it because he's not being creepy while they're around. It's always when he's in the garden or writing his books or, whatever, is when he gets that look in his eye. You can see the wheels turning. He's trying to process all of this.
Yeah, he gets that little glint in his eye, the slight smile at the corner of his mouth. And that's really such a credit to William Fichtner. Just very masterful subtlety in how he played this character. Because like you were saying, like he doesn't have to tell you. He really, and this is a great thing with the good acting. He shows you everything that's going on with him. He shows you what he's doing.
And he's so believable in the fact that you can see that he's so awkward now. And you can also see in a couple times when he's telling stories about how things were, whatever, how he was actually pretty warm and, pretty nice guy to be around. You can see these two warring parts of him.
And you can definitely, kind of sense the longing in him too for that younger, more vibrant version of himself. Which I think he sees his neighbor as representing maybe a return to that too. And as he becomes more engrossed with this, it becomes a problem with his marriage. And his wife ends up kicking him out because he is, as his son puts it, having a midlife crisis.
Yeah. Well, the thing that sets it off is he oversteps his bounds. So after he has the talk about, well, I should have stepped in, or, he thinks to himself, I should have done something.
I should have done something.
So the next time the neighbors fight, he hears something break, he hears someone scream, and so he hops over the fence immediately to go in the neighbor's place to see what the hell's going on, because he's grown close to to Jenna. And is concerned for her and a little bit longing for her.
Oh, he's very much infatuated at this point. I mean, he's deeply infatuated.
Yeah. But we get the sense that it's kind of mostly a one-way thing.
Mostly a one-way. Like, she appreciates him. She likes him. They get along.
Right.
But he's wanting so much more out of it than what's really there.
Yeah.
Which isn't quite obvious at this point in the film, but
it's obvious that when he goes in, that Scott has smacked the wife around maybe a little bit, knocked a lamp over, and he goes full aggro on Mike because Mike's coming into a house
uninvited. Yeah,
Mike's come into his house uninvited and sticking his nose way into somebody else's business, and it's not welcome. So this kind of sets off the tension between him and Scott, where now Scott's like, "Oh, like you want to be with my wife, right?" Like, instant, wants to shove jealousy in his face and just kind of be a jerk about everything. So this sets the tone for the rest of their relationship in the movie is adversarial relationship between Mike and Scott.
as we're before prior to that, it was it was still quite friendly and neighborly.
Right.
But yeah, and his character, Mike's character, the character of Mike did make a big mistake when he went over the fence like that. Not that he went over the fence or that he went over the house, but the fact that he didn't even knock. Like he let himself in. That was the part too where he really crossed that line. Really letting himself get carried away.
And that's where you can see the fantasy that he's got in his head is now spilling over into the reality.
Yeah. Yeah, he's not thinking things through. He's making emotional decisions at this point.
And his wife said, like, why didn't you call the police? What you shouldn't be involved in this.
Yeah.
What are you doing? So she's kind of trying to rein him back in, like, come back to reality. And he
just can't because he's kind of gone by then. She even tries to get him to promise, like, hey, promise me you'll call the cops next time. And he can't do that because he's too emotionally invested in Jenna now. So, so he ends up getting sent to a motel, and kicked out. And he's, kind of thinking about what his next step is. And he starts Facebook stalking Jenna.
And this is the point where he really bottoms out as far as just being really pathetic. And like he calls the son to tell him like that they're separated, and the son's just like, yeah, Dad, she kicked you out. Like what are you doing? Like,
oh, like, well, we just need some time apart.
There's no sympathy at all for his dad.
Yeah. Yeah. Alex is very much like, yeah, can you guys just like fix this? Cause this is weird, Yeah. Mom says you're having a midlife crisis. Oh, well, a lot of Mike's character, I mean, you like him and you sympathize with him, but a lot of it is just, yeah, he's very much one of those.
It's funny, too, because typically, like, the Corvette symbolizes the midlife crisis. So it's kind of funny that the neighbor is the one that's always pushing the Corvette, and he's like the one that's not interested.
Oh, but Mike's would normally be an ideal client for him.
Exactly.
Which is why he pushes it so hard. It's like, hey, if you don't want a Corvette, I got something else. It'll beat that Toyota.
Yeah. So it's kind of the opposite. It's a flipping of that trope.
Yeah, it's just funny because, you see all around Mike, all these characters with like this inner confidence. His buddy Brian has it in spades. The neighbor Scott has it. His son has it. His wife has it. His wife wears the pants. And his wife is like in charge of her destiny and in command of herself. And the only other one who's kind of like adrift on the sea a little bit is Jenna, but only to a point. She still seems to have more control over herself than he does. So he gets kicked out. He goes to the Fleabag Motel, which not that bad, honestly. I mean, it's got a pool. There's some palm trees. I only heard one police car in the background during that scene. So, not the worst place. Maybe not the best.
It was okay.
But not the worst. And he then decides after being there for a little bit, he's like, oh, I'm going to go back to the house and make dinner for my wife. And he brings flowers and everything and, talks to Jenna a bit in the backyard.
Because also we didn't mention, but before when Mike was moving out, it turned out that Jenna was also talking about moving out because Jenna and Mike had a kind of little outing where they went out. She was trying to get him to help her with the garden. So they went out to a gardening place and he was telling her stories about, how he used to be and kind of stuff like that. And they were just getting very close. And they smoked a little herb and got a little comfy. And she was started opening up about what Scott was up to and how she felt like maybe I need to go away or like, get out of this. Like maybe this was a mistake. And kind of in a moment of weakness for both of them, they end up kissing. And so that kind of turns things also again, like there's no way this can end well. This is all uncomfortable. And so you get the sense, that, she's going to move away and he's going to move away, and he thinks maybe this is my chance. Like, maybe I can make this happen. We can have something, you know, this might actually go somewhere. But it turns out when he comes back home that she is staying because she's pregnant.
And everything's better, and she's happier, and you can just see it absolutely rip him up inside.
Yes.
You know, and then
that moment
yeah,
is incredible.
it is.
Because he goes from like happy and just really happy to see her again, you know, genuinely happy, to slowly, you know, just his face dying, basically.
Yeah, it's like, oh, that's so wonderful.
And then to fake happy,
and just hearing it in his voice and everything, just seeing this guy just get absolutely destroyed like that, man, that's rough, you know. But yeah, so and then after that, he goes into the house, you know, and tries to, you know, make his wife dinner, and she's just like, "What the hell are you doing here?"
she just brushes him off.
It's like, we're separated. Why are you here? And he can't give her an answer because he's not really there for her. He's there for Jenna. You know, using this dinner to reconcile as a ruse, just to get back into proximity.
And a bit, I think he just wants his life back, you know.
Oh, sure. You know, I mean, who wants to live in a hotel?
I mean, even if he can't be with Jenna, he still wants to come back, you know, just
sure,
have his life back.
It's where all this stuff is.
But this is the problem, is that he has no bargaining position. And that's where, you know, he tries to make his wife dinner, bring her flowers, and like play that angle. But he really has no, like, his son doesn't care. The wife doesn't care. There's no one that's like wants him to come back.
Yeah, he was just kind of, he wasn't in the way before when things were, I guess, normal before the neighbors moved in, but he wasn't in the way, but he wasn't really appreciated, and he wasn't, you know, certainly all that valuable, you feel like. And perhaps when, you know, after his wife realizes he's getting mentally lost in this mental fugue that she's just, you know, like, hey, I need to not deal with this anymore. And then he still comes back after just a couple of days. Like, he's not even, you know, taking her concerns seriously either.
Yeah. I mean, she can see that he's just completely lost.
Yeah.
Like, there's no reason he should be there. You know, he should just let her have her space.
You know, or at least call and be like, hey, can I make dinner? Can we talk? And instead he just, you know, shows up, lets himself in, he starts cooking. She shows up. She's like, I have like student teacher conference night tonight.
But it shows you like it keeps reinforcing. He's in this fantasy version in his head where he thinks he's doing these good things, and everyone else around him keeps bringing reality back in. Like, no, this is not what you do. This isn't how you do this. Like, this is not a good time to talk. I've worked all day, and you know,
I'm gonna have 2 more hours of meetings.
Yeah, I don't have time for dinner. I definitely don't have time to talk about that.
Don't have time to talk about it now. Don't have time to talk about it when I'm done.
And he's just sad and lonely and disappointed. So he eats his little meal by himself, and that's kind of gonna be the end of it. You know, he's just gonna go off on his own way, and you would think that would be it. You know, he's lost the fight.
Should have been it. And he
tail tucked between his legs.
You know, he cleans up his little dishes, and then he goes out the front door, and then he sees Jenna again in the front lawn. And I was kind of yelling at the TV, like, get in your car and drive. Just get in your car and drive away. And I don't think that's what he did, Ken. Instead, he took one look at her and he starts making a beeline for her, like, hey, Jenna. You know, he's still sad, he's still crestfallen, but, you know, you can tell, like, there's still that puppy dog fascination he has with her. You know, and they talk for a minute, and then Scott, the mean drunk, comes out and starts yelling at her.
Fully loaded.
You know, it's like, get back inside. And, you know, she's like, you know, hey, you know.
She's smoking. And she's pregnant, so, you know, it's not ideal.
And that's pissing Scott off. And, well, Mike can't help but just butt in one last time, can he? And they have, and he gets hit in the face and knocked down to the ground. And then Scotty drags his wife back inside. And that should have been the end of it. And he should have taken his wife's advice and then called the police. Did he call the police, Ken?
No, he didn't.
He didn't call the police. What did he do instead, Ken?
Well, at this point, the fantasy in his mind is in full swing, and he thinks he can just white knight this all the way to the end and be the hero. So he goes in after them, after, already previously being told to get out of their house and not come in. He goes in to try to save her because, Scott's still yelling at Jenna, and so goes in and smacks, Scott, which just makes him more angry and really hits him,
And Scott's, quite a bit younger than him.
Yes.
Much better physical shape and just much more angry.
And drunk.
Drunk. And that's just not an even match for an older, meek, middle-aged man. That's a completely unfair fight. So he kind of knocks the crap out of Mike. Mike hits the floor. And then Mike grabs a knocked over golf club and really gives Scott a concussion or worse.
Yeah, I think worse.
And Scott ends up in a pool of blood in the kitchen, and Jenna freaks out and screams at Mike to get out of her house and leave. And I think it's only at that moment. It's only at that moment that he realizes that, oh God, I went too far.
And not only that he went too far, but that she can never be on his side. Even if she's getting abused by her husband, she could never be on Mike's side in the end. As soon as she sees Scott injured, she is 1,000% behind him.
Yeah.
I mean,
her husband.
She's concerned,
That's her husband and, the father of her unborn child.
And this is the moment where Mike finally realizes what he's done. And you can see it, he's finally realizing how messed up this all is. It finally took to that.
And he goes back to his old house and goes sits in his garden and looks at one of his amazing, delicious tomatoes and just hears the cops coming. And that's it.
It ends very abruptly.
It ends pretty abruptly. I mean, there's not much. By the time we get to that point, there's not much else to happen. It's not like you're surprised that it ends, but it does end abruptly. And so much of this film was like anxiety and tension and suspense and just kind of building and building and building. And it never really pays off.
It's funny because after talking about it, I think I appreciate it more.
I do too, but when you're watching it, it doesn't going back, when his wife kicks him out, it really felt like how did you put it?
Well, we had to stop it when it happened because it was so far out there. Now, we made it make narrative sense the way we talked about it, but the fact that the wife kicks him out at that point in time in the story was really weak writing because they've established throughout the film, even though they're on separate pages, that they're a comfortable couple.
And they've been together for a very long time. They're not like...
It's not like they fight.
They don't fight.
They're just, they got to that complacent part of their relationship.
Yeah, they're just incredibly, incredibly comfortable to the point of boredom, but they're not miserable, and they're not at each other's throats, and they're not particularly unhappy. They're just not thrilled.
Right.
And it really does seem like, with how much they talk otherwise and everything, it just doesn't seem. It felt out of character for her. And it just seemed out of character for their marriage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If someone is, and I said this at the time, if your husband's going through a midlife crisis, are you going to kick him out so he can go stay in a seedy hotel?
No.
That's not what you, at least, like how I was raised, that's not what you would do. That is the last thing you would do, is kick someone to the curb so they can indulge every bad impulse that they're having, which in a way is kind of what ends up happening.
And yeah, exactly. It just reinforces his fantasy and, non-reality, basically. And like, it doesn't make sense to, because she kicked him out so she could do what? They already were living separate lives. Like, they already were hardly together anyway, at meal times and
they slept in the same bed
and catching up at bedtime.
Yeah.
Like, that was the weakest, and we like literally had to stop the film just to discuss it then, because it was like, up until that point, the writing was very solid in the movie.
It really was, and it was kind of keeping you guessing. Now it's kind of like, because I kept wondering, like, ooh, is Jenna trying to like manipulate Mike to like kill her husband?
Yes.
In a previous conversation, Lisa talked about how Jenna talked to her about doing yoga.
Yep.
And it's like, you wonder, ooh, is Jenna pulling his wife strings too and playing both sides against the middle? And
the way that because you didn't see when Jenna and Scott were fighting.
You never saw it.
You don't know exactly what happened either. You only know as much as he heard, which is like if you heard someone in the next room over or the next house over fighting about something. So, we both had a suspicion that there was something else going on, or something deeper, or, maybe there might be a twist in here somewhere.
Maybe Jenna was really the particularly bad apple, with her douchebag husband. Maybe she was trying to scheme something. I mean, we had some different ideas on what was going on. So when his wife very uncharacteristically just kicks her husband out, just because he went over to maybe prevent or stop some domestic violence, it's like, it just
it was very weak.
It was very weak. But I was at least holding out for like, well, maybe this will actually make sense later, but it never really does.
And I think the problem is. And that is the problem with the way that things ramped up at the end. And I think why the ending wasn't as satisfying is because we needed a more severe event when she kicked him out.
Yeah, it never really came.
She needed to kick him out because she found out that he kissed the neighbor.
Yeah.
There needed to be something else there.
Yeah.
Because no one else ever knew anything about that either.
Yeah, she never knew that he smoked pot with Jenna. He never knew that they made out. At least not that we ever see on the screen.
No, they don't even talk. So
it just it was unwarranted, I felt.
But they could have so easily fixed that.
They could have
if she saw them kiss or something like that.
So I'm not saying he didn't deserve it,
right?
But, based on the information that she had and from talking to him, it was uncalled for.
It took us right out.
It just took us right out. It was uncalled for. It was unwarranted. It did not feel right at all. And it didn't feel in keeping with what we knew of these characters so far.
It's just they needed to earn it a little bit more.
They did. And they just kind of jumped the gun on that.
And it could have worked fine.
Yeah.
It
could have been that maybe that was the scene that was written or filmed and it just didn't make it into the cut.
Yeah.
That's also a possibility.
And I think probably that might be it too, because they spent so much time on everything else that it is very much a build-up development movie. You spend a lot of time just watching life happen, and so it isn't the most thrilling because it's just all it is like normal life with this underlying tension and awkwardness. And since the focus is on that, I could definitely see, maybe they made some changes along the way. But I don't know. That scene feels like it was how it was intended. It just feels slightly out of place and not quite earned.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
So anyway, that was our first hint that maybe this wasn't
not going to be quite the movie that we were hoping to have
because
tonight.
Up until that point, the writing was very good.
It really was. And
it was mostly good after that.
Yeah, mostly.
Until the end, which throughout the whole movie we also discussed, this was a slow build up. And for this movie to really pay off in the end, it needed to get crazy at the end. And it didn't get crazy. He does, obviously get in this physical altercation and smack Scott with the club, which makes things real, and like snaps him out of it, snaps Jenna out of it. But it doesn't feel like it felt like we were building up to something more than that.
It really did. I mean, from like a realistic point of view, what actually happened on the screen is probably much more likely as to what would actually have happened in real life if these were real people.
Right.
But this is also entertainment. This is also art. So it does kind of beg the question why we didn't get a little more out of that at the end. They definitely could have done a little more. So, I mean, like I'd say, 3/4 of a really good movie. It was, I'd recommend it,
Yeah, I think it was fine.
It was
I
fine.
think that's the problem.
Yeah, it's fine.
Is that the ending was fine, but it was not great. And really, it could have had, it was building towards something really great.
Yeah, this like I said at the beginning, this movie had a ton of potential.
Yeah. So, but like you're saying though, I think they just played it more realistic, and he did have the rude awakening at the end, where you're left with, he's going to face the consequence of this, and life is going to go on for everyone else. He's obviously ruined Scott's life.
Possibly even ended it.
Maybe he deserved it, maybe not, but he's ruined his own life.
Yeah, I mean, regardless of whether or not his neighbor deserved it, it wasn't Mike's place to judge him in that regard.
Yeah.
And he really stepped in and made a judgment. Yeah, he really only destroyed his own life and that of Scott and the woman that he cares about.
Yeah.
So let's look at some other things here. So best performance, worst performance. So
Well, I think Mike has to be the best performance.
William Fichtner, absolutely. He was top notch, A+. Definitely makes you uncomfortable consistently throughout this film.
You never had to guess his emotions. You could always see it. It was always in his performance. And, his little sheepishness, kind of when he's with people and when he's alone, he's very intense.
Yes. I couldn't have said that better.
Yeah.
Now, worst performance, I guess that's really the most extraneous character at this point. Most useless, most extraneous character. I think we agree on that one. The son, Alex.
Yes.
Who
another wasted opportunity.
He ultimately served no purpose other than to show what a weak father Mike's character was. And not even as much as I feel like the character could have done a lot more than just that little facet.
And I think we both suspected that he was going to be more involved into the final act.
He really should have been, and he is not there for the final act at all. He's completely gone.
Yeah.
He's completely gone for the final act. Where is he? We don't know. It doesn't matter because the character doesn't matter.
Yeah, he didn't really serve a purpose in the end.
He really didn't. He was just there to just be like, yeah, I don't really want to hang out with you, Dad. That's his whole character right there.
And just to get involved with the neighbors to make him uncomfortable.
Yeah, that was it. Just to build a little tension and just make Mike look like a crappy father. And that's pretty much all we got out of that.
Yeah, we could have been without him, and it would have been fine if he never showed up.
And I think so let's see. So for I don't know, do we still do the best plot point, worst plot point? On occasion.
For this one, I don't know.
Well, for this one, I mean, the worst plot point I think we just covered with the kicking out.
Yeah, that's definitely the worst. Best, I think making Mike somewhat relatable, when he's just being himself, and like how they show how he has in his head these fantasies, but he's not willing to admit them to his friends and family. Like, you
or
know,
his wife when his wife challenges on him directly too.
exactly, because you know when he's out with his friend, his buddy's like, I know you look at that neighbor, and Mike's like, oh no, I would never do that. When we know all along,
Oh yeah, we know.
he's
We
been
know.
watching her,
Yeah.
and longing for her a little bit, and yeah, I think that's the best part is how they show that like the audience sees very clearly exactly what he thinks and feels, and all the people in his life are trying to say like, hey, like we see it too.
Yeah, they
and
all
he
see
is
it.
in complete denial to everyone else.
Yeah, he's so transparent to everyone but himself in a way.
Yeah.
Because he just can't admit to himself what he's feeling and what it is that he wants. True of so many of us. So, final score and recommendation. What do you think? Like 1 out of 10? I mean, I'd give this a 6.
Yeah, I think 6 is fair.
Yeah, I think 6 is fair. I mean,
I will say it is very well made.
It is.
We didn't kind of discuss this, but the house is very nice. The way it's shot is all very nice.
Cinematography and set direction is A+.
Yep. The building the tension is all great in the way they show things and the way they don't show things, because they keep not showing what's going on with the neighbors when fights or whatever stuff is going down, but they show the neighbors whenever he's creeping on them. So it's always you get that. The only time you actually see them or get information about them is from his point of view.
Which that's a great little observation there, because you only see everything through his lens for sure. You never see any scenes apart from him.
So in a lot of ways, we become the creeper.
Oh my God.
Along with
We're
him.
the creeper. And you really could have called this film The Creeper.
Yeah.
Or, 2 hours of anxiety. Either one would work. It wasn't quite 2 hours, but close enough.
Contagious anxiety.
Contagious anxiety. So I guess that wraps it up for this week's episode of Complimentary Cinema here on the O&M Stockroom. Thank you for joining us this evening. Please feel free to leave a comment down below. Let us know what you thought of this film, if you've seen it, or if you enjoyed our little review. I mean, we're not going to read these anyway, but, humor us anyhow.
That just means you should do it even more.
Just do it even more. All right, well, that wraps it up for this week's episode of Complimentary Cinema here on the O&M Stockroom. We're your hosts, Brian McGarry.
And Ken O'Malley.
Join us next week for another free movie from YouTube that will talk about much longer than it really deserves. But that's what we're here for. Until next time.